Christian Rao of Locked On Kansas State. There is no better expert to talk about this one. Jerome Tang, I know there have been murmurs in season, even last offseason, about him returning to Baylor, going to the quiet life, fading away. There was controversy last season. There's more controversy again as he'll miss back-to-back NCAA tournaments, will not make a postseason whatsoever. This one, at least if they're invited, I know that you mentioned off air that they will likely decline that. I know it's year 3. But to regress the way that Kansas State has, right? Had Jerome Tang not gone to that Elite Eight in year 1, maybe things are a bit different, but the fan base just seems unhappy.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like it's a social media problem. I don't know if it's a full Kansas State problem. I think it's just a small group of
Twitter
upset people. Yeah, really, Twitter. I think it is the case. But when you get an idea of the actual whole Kansas State fanhood, I don't know if it's the same feeling about Jerome Tang. Now, to continue on that part, well, obviously they fall to Baylor, and Baylor's a great team, and there's a lot of relationships between Jerome Tang and Baylor, and we all know those. Everybody on the broadcast to let you know a million times about him as well. But he did say that they're also not going to most likely participate in any type of postseason tournament. He said that he thinks that the crown like Las Vegas is a bad timing for Kansas State, and he thinks seniors like Coleman Hawkins and David Gasson won't want to play in it. So he said, quote, "I don't see that happening." So nothing confirmed, but again, I think the season for Kansas State is over. I don't think he's on the verge of losing his job. Now, one, the buyout's absolutely insane. It's close to $18 million, Drake. I don't think that's going to happen. Now, if he decides to leave, that number's a lot lower that they have to pay him. But if Kansas State decides to remove or void his contract, it's about $18 million, or at least somewhere around that area, to buy him out. So I don't think that's happening because you already had this type of NIL feeling. You had some kind of NIL traffic coming in this season. It didn't work out. Now, according to some media outlets, it was the number 2 transfer portal class in the entire country, and you're not even going to make the dance. So it obviously didn't work out. I can see that being a concern moving forward. We saw what just happened with Utah. The reason for why Utah's coach is no longer going to be there because donors were no longer willing to give NIL. Could that be a concern in the future for Kansas State? I think we would be ignorant not to think that could be a concern in the future. But right now, I think he's pretty safe, and it's unfortunate that they couldn't make a long dance into Kansas City because I think that just would have been really fun. A Colorado Kansas State final, wouldn't that have been fun?
That would have been pretty neat, and sadly, we will not see that in this year's Big 12 tournament. Interesting this season. You lose 9 out of 10 when you're Kansas State, including losses to Wichita State, to Drake, Oklahoma State. Then you rattle off 6 in a row, including that win at number 3 Iowa State by 19 points, only to follow up that win streak by losing 4 in a row. Does it feel like the angst, that's the word I'm going to use, the angst from Kansas State fans comes from a place of just confusion? I mean, had it been more of a, 2 wins, a loss, 3 losses, 2 wins kind of season, maybe there's a little less pent-up frustration, but just the ebb and flow of hope and despair, and hope and despair has got to be demoralizing.
They love to say in college basketball that it's a game of runs, and I think they took that too seriously this year with their winning streaks and losing streaks. And the fact that they started off just dreadful in non-conference, and after getting the Big 12 opener, that was great against Cincinnati, you falling 6 straight in the Big 12, it just left a really sour taste. It was a nice feeling having that 6-game winning streak against multiple ranked teams in the middle of the season, in the middle of the Big 12 conference. It gave us hope, right? There was a fact, we were back on the bubble at one point as an at-large team, but it just wasn't meant to be. And I think that's probably where the angst is coming from. Obviously you can talk about any kind of burner sitting behind a Twitter and talk about who they want to fire. Normally those people don't have their pictures of themselves on there when they're having that type of conversation. But, I don't think he's in serious trouble. I think they're going to give him a couple more years to figure this out personally, especially if Gene Taylor continues to be the athletic director. What I would like to see, though, is some sort of changing in his coaching staff, maybe not firing or removal, but bringing in somebody that could maybe give a jolt to the offense, because towards the end of the season, especially, and we saw in last night's game as well, the shooting was bad and the shooting continued to be bad. And the offense struggled with just trying to figure out how to get the ball down low or find open shots. And obviously that comes with some talent level as well, but that it seems to be a growing problem that has not only happened this season, but was an issue as well last year as well. So I'd like to see them maybe add an offensive-minded assistant coach to help Jerome Tang and the rest of the Wildcats take that next step forward, because they have the talent. And if they can keep it around, because the transfer portal is coming soon, obviously you want to try and build this team and keep this nucleus. Jerome Tang continues to talk about the Houston model, right? What Houston's done over these past couple seasons, retaining all these players and then just bringing in players to retool and continue to be a top team in the nation. He wants to mimic that. Why wouldn't you? And if they can do that, if they can keep these players around, then I think they have a good chance, but they got to change a couple schemes as well.
If anybody is a fan of Jerome Tang, I want to raise my hand and say that I'm in that camp. He was, when we were in Waco together, one of the nicest assistant coaches to me. When Baylor won the Big 12 championship for the first time, I guess for the second time, when they went back to back, the first hug that I got was from Jerome Tang on the court. And I'll never forget that moment. He's somebody who would go out of his way to make sure that many of us felt seen and to open conversations and to become an arm of the program that was open to fans, to media, to those of us who wanted to give Baylor its flowers. I want to give Tang that credit. It has not gone the last 2 years the way that it was expected to go based on an Elite Eight run in year number one. And now he's facing heat that I would agree with you is altogether unwarranted. And there were conversations last year of the president of the university or the athletic director of that department not having full support of him and his decisions, and just friction points that have made things tough for Tang. Yet he has withstood a lot, including, I want to bring up Coleman Hawkins here, who made $2 million in NIL this year. And yeah, he was emotional after the game, talking to reporters, was upset. And what I go to is, man, 23 years old, right? We're in the workforce now, making $2 million for your university. It's twofold. On one hand, ma'am, you can't talk about like of course there's pressure. Of course, the media and the fans got to you, that noise got to you, but also you're a $2 million man. I would take $2 million for a year of pressure at Kansas State. Then on the other hand, I think NIL has really fostered this, put unnecessary and new pressure on players that causes this pressure cooker that puts Coleman Hawkins in the position he was in this year. If you're Tang, you've got to manage that. And from my perspective, the host of Locked On Big 12, Christian, it seems like the Hawkins situation is a microcosm of just a whole lot of problems with NIL in Kansas State because of the sheer amount of money the Wildcats doled out this year.
I don't disagree with that whatsoever, but I will say that it has seemingly shown to drastically improve over the last couple weeks. I think if you would have asked me this same question a month and a half ago, I would have been completely on board with you saying something has to change. I'd be on fire. I'd be streaming at the top of the rooftops, Craig, saying the exact same thing. But what I saw, just for example, after the Arizona State win in the first round, Doug McDaniel and Coleman Hawkins sitting at the press conference table talking about the game with Coach Tang, you could just tell that the vibes were different. The feeling with this team, the buy-in, the buzzword that Jerome Tang continued to use this season when he was trying to get this team all on one page after that crappy non-conference, after bringing in a bunch of different players from different spots, bring him in, trying to work as a cohesive unit. I think that it finally started to click. Unfortunately, that was March. That was the biggest problem. And I think that is the biggest lesson that Jerome Tang and the rest of the coaching staff have to take from this. This is the first year they really dove in deep, spent money on NIL. It took them a long time to get together and figure this out. If they can, again, going back to that whole spot, if they can have that nucleus and build a huge core, because they just let everybody walk last year.
Yeah.
If they can build that core and find a way to continue that culture moving into next year, I'm not so concerned, because I think Jerome Tang is a great coach. I'm right there with you. And I think he can lead this team back to the NCAA tournament, back to wherever the case needs be. And I really do. But it all starts there. With the Coleman Hawkins situation, though, that obviously is what led to all of it. And yeah, you talk about how much money he made. Obviously, that was a huge concern. But there were multiple people on social media that was attacking him for his performance. And we've all seen this. And this is not just pushed towards college basketball or college athletics as well. It did come down. There was some investigations, investigative journalism, if you will, on our good old Twitter feeds. And it came down to a gambling account. People were mad that they were not getting their bets. It wasn't even Kansas State fans so that were upset about that. I think that was what makes it even worse. If you didn't know, he didn't perform well last night, but he has a fractured tibia. He's playing on a fractured tibia. It's absolutely insane.
The fall apart, and fall apart is to me the right word, of Kansas State at times this season leads to a year without a postseason bid for Jerome Tang. I do expect him to be back next year. Coming up, Darian DeVries. Will he be back at West Virginia or gone to Indiana? This is a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Kansas State crossover.